This week, the House Oversight Committee urged the U.S. government to cancel Donald Trump's lease of the historic Washington building he turned into Trump International Hotel. The request comes after Trump's accounting firm disavowed a decade's worth of Trump Organization financial statements. Last year, Trump made a deal to sell the money-losing property for nearly $400 million, which would net him a $100 million profit. As House Democrats said this week, no one should be rewarded for providing false or misleading information to the federal government or for seeking to profit off the presidency. For more on all of this, our Saturday night panel is back in the House with us. So, Jennifer, the House Oversight Committee is concerned the Trump Organization filed inaccurate financial statements to get the lease on the D.C. hotel. That stems in part from news that the accounting firm used by the Trump Organization cut ties with the company and said it can no longer vouch for 10 years' worth of the company's financial statements. This was in a letter made public by New York Attorney General Letitia James as part of her civil probe on that she's doing up in New York. So how big of a deal do you think all of this is right now?
Well, I think the letter is a big deal because you never want your accountants to not only fire you, but say the last 10 years of what we put out is probably fraudulent. They are obviously now concerned about their own liability, concerned about not having their own reputations ruined. But, you know, the Trump Hotel was a farce from the get-go. Even under the terms of the lease, he was in violation. There was a clause in there that says no one who works for the federal government should be profiting from this. He was working for the federal government, so he never should have been awarded the lease in the first place. He then used, apparently, fraudulent documents to get them. But just think of all the other things he used these accounting documents for, whether it was bank loans, whether it was insurance. So he's in a heap of trouble. And I think the fact that his accountants no longer want to stamp aside it and that they looked at what the state attorney general had found and they said, whoops, means that she has got quite a lot of information apparent to her. And pretty soon, I think you're going to see some other people come out of the woodwork as well.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think that's an interesting point, Hayes, that Jennifer's making, because in an NBC News think piece, Michael Conway, a former counsel with the House Judiciary Committee, argues that Mazar's disavowal of Trump's financial statement is a turning point in this New York Attorney General's investigation into whether Trump and his company engaged in fraud. Do you think this is a significant step in this direction for both probes, actually, the state and the federal probes?
Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, we have a situation where you really just don't want your accounting firm to say, well, we didn't find any fraud, but we can't say for sure that these were all legit, like that all of our numbers were as they should be. Like, I'm intrigued to see who the heck is going to be doing the Trump Organization's taxes for this upcoming tax season? If Mazars isn't going to do it, who is going to actually be filing that in the next couple of months when those taxes are due? And how closely is the IRS going to be looking? Maybe they're finally going to be running that audit that Trump spent 4 years saying was happening and actually look into the documents that they're given. I think that the fact that we have all this happening at a time when Letitia James, when Trump and his children are now being compelled to actually give testimony in Letitia James's civil suit. I believe it's like 10 days that the federal judge gave Trump to actually sit down. I mean, the judge gave to Trump and his children to actually sit down for these depositions under oath. So it's going to be a really interesting couple of weeks to see like how the Trump Organization tries to dig itself out of this mess. Yeah,
there's a lot of digging going on, Laurie, because last fall, the same accounting firm reported that from 2016 to 2020, Trump's D.C. hotel lost nearly $75 million. Now, that wouldn't be surprising, given his history of bankrupting casinos and the like. But this is when Trump was straddling the campaign and his time in the White House, which quite literally is down the street from his hotel. And I know for a fact it was the hot spot, supposedly, to go to. yet and still he couldn't make it work. What does that say about Trump's business acumen, taking the presidency aside, or just running this thing, that he still loses $75 million on a property that everyone supposedly was hanging out at?
Well, I read that article 3 times, and I just left it feeling that everyone in the hotel industry should be arrested. Nothing feels legal in that industry. But also, I'm so used to Trump getting away with everything that I lost hope. And, he has never paid any consequences. And when he survived COVID, I'm like, he's going to get away with everything. But when Letitia James stopped running for governor so she could still be attorney general, I was like, oh, she's got something. And so I'm very excited to see how this all pans out.
So to that point, Jennifer, you look at where Trump is right now, the kind of week he's had. Certainly his legal team has been a little busy. Take your pick. We learned Trump and 2 of his children are going to have to answer questions under oath as part of the New York investigation. President Biden told the National Archives to turn over the Trump White House visitor logs. A judge added the Trump Organization back to that Trump inaugural committee lawsuit. And the National Archives found classified material in the items Trump took to Mar-a-Lago. So what stood out to you most of all these little legal machinations for Trump?
I think it's the Mazars issue, because that has salience across all of these issues, and it has salience in loans that he presented, loan applications he presented to banks, in all sorts of ways. So I think if you're really going to go to the heart of the Trump scam machine, that's really the way to do it. But I will say one thing about all of this is fascinating, and that is it took a new administration for all of this to come out. All of this was available last year, the year before, but suddenly, oh, lo and behold, now that you have people who are not corrupt, who are not serving the president of the United States as their personal accountants and as their personal defense lawyers, suddenly we have a whole bunch of new stuff coming out. So goodness knows what more we're going to learn now that we have adults in there, and now that we have some of these basic arguments that he made about absolute immunity crumbling. I think he's going to have to start paying the piper. But as far as the deposition is concerned, I am convinced he's going to take the Fifth Amendment, which, as Trump said himself, is what guilty people really do.
Right, yeah, that he did. So Lori, in a past life, I'm willing to confess, I had meetings with Donald Trump in Trump Tower, and I can confirm without a doubt that nothing happens without his knowledge. He has his finger on the pulse of everything that comes into his orbit. And so, even down to, decisions on the style of doorknobs and handles and those types of things. So when you're looking at all of this, maybe pleading the Fifth, to Jennifer's point, is the only way he can avoid perjury. So listen to this clip of his last deposition from 2016 as part of the Trump University case.
How many more do you have? How many more do you have? Mr. Trump, you're the one who wants to get through this quickly. Just answer the questions and we'll get through it quickly. You're not going to get anything through quickly. You don't want to get anything through quickly. Same answer. Let's just go to court and get this case. I'm dying to go to court on this case.
Folks, this is going to be a heck of a show. Laurie, are you dying to see how he does in his upcoming depositions? And I'm sure you're going to be writing some material on that, right? What can you expect from that?
And he's going to jail. Like, let's celebrate. Let's have a party. I can't wait to never write another Trump joke again. I want them all in prison. I don't want to see them. I think didn't Eric take the Fifth like 200 times once? Like, those might be the only words he knows, is what I'm saying. And I never want to see them again. I don't enjoy talking about Trump. And I can't wait for him to be locked up. And he's going to be so antsy in prison, and he's going to be wearing orange, and he is orange, and he's just going to blend into the walls. And I can't wait to see him suffer.
It's a look. We'll just leave it at that. Panel, please stick around. We have a lot more to discuss. Still ahead, the art of the fail. New evidence shows one of Trump's biggest trade deals in office was, guess what? All smoke and mirrors. I'll explain next.